Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that race line. Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC has hired Lincoln Riley. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio, episode 495, coming to you on Monday, August 14th, 2023. It is the first week of 2 weeks. This is college football season, folks. We're going to preview the USC offense in this episode. We will be back Wednesday with our defensive preview, but today's all about Caleb Williams, Austin Jones, Mario Williams, Zach Branch, an offensive line led by Justin Dedich, and so much more. How good can this offense be this year? How good were they last year? What are the big position battles of note? Who are the projected starters that we think could get a lot of playing time? All of that we are going to discuss and more in this episode. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant of Troy. Our email address is rantoftroy@fanside.com. Our phone number, 818-643-7227 is the Rant Line number. Save that into your phone, especially as we get closer and closer to game week, which is just next week. As always, I'm your host, Mike Rocio, and you can join me here with my co-host here in the Rant Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Daratola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. I am super pumped. I'm always pumped when we do an offensive preview. It's one. There's like things that happen in August that mean that you're closer to the beginning of the season. It's the offensive and defensive preview. It's the season predictions episode. It's Little League World Series highlights. And I saw like the regional highlights yesterday online. Like, that's how you know. That's how you know that things are coming along. So yeah, I'm stoked, and I hope you are, because we've got 2 episodes at least, if not 3 episodes every single week for maybe 4 episodes, sneak preview or something coming up.
I have been looking forward to these episodes ever since we set the end of our off-season schedule.
Yeah.
I have had these circled as these are going to be awesome to put together. These are going to be great for us. These are going to be great for the people listening, because as we've said, the off-season is long. The summer is long. If you don't pay attention as closely to what's going on around USC, that's completely reasonable. We know that people are out there. We know that there are people who are sticking on every little thing that's happening, but I think the majority of fans this is the time of year when they are re-entering the pool. They're dipping their toes back in and trying to get a sense of, okay, what does the offense look like? What does the defense look like? What are the names I need to know going into this season? And that's what this episode is all about. So I'm super excited about it.
Are you doubting the Rotbot? I think the average Rotbot lives and breathes SC football. These are podcast listeners. These are pure sickos. These are people who are wondering what is going to happen to the 85th roster spot in the middle of June.
Yeah, I mean, our Rotbots are definitely the people who are tracking which walk-ons are gonna be able to kept on the roster and all of that kind of stuff. Exactly. I get it. I'm just thinking of, like, our friend Trinice, who has texted us going like, "Hey, I need you guys to do a tell me what I'm looking forward to this season," kind of stuff. It's
here you go.
We're looking out for you too. You don't all have to. It's we're no judgment zone. If you haven't been keeping up, that's fine. That's what we're here for. Catch you back up.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can all be sickos during the season.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to talk about this stuff, because put together like a bit of a presentation to walk you through here on YouTube, and there's a bunch of our friends here in the chat, a bunch of Rotbots. We've got Darlene, Ernesto, Kenny's here, Hank is here, Cigar is here, Tim is here, Dave is here, Cameron is here, Johnny is here. There's a bunch of people Join us every Monday and Wednesday for live shows during the season as game recap episodes and what we call game fallout episodes on Mondays, game preview episodes on Wednesdays. Of course, CarCast after each game on Saturdays after the game. And a new feature for our members on the Rot Squad, which are our YouTube membership members. Thursday nights, we are launching a new show. It is called Rod After Dark. And if you remember,
Old concept.
Yeah, old concept back from our Patreon days.
New look.
New look, kind of refigured. It's basically just going to be like a hangout, live stream, a bit of a call-in show. We can call in to have the Rotbots in the Rot Squad call in on Thursday nights. Looking forward to the next game or whatnot. We're going to start this week, Thursday night, members only. You can join our membership here on YouTube. And then you can also get access to our Discord channel to talk about USC football nonstop, not only with us, but with other Rotbots. And then you get the bonus content. You also get in the chat, you get the little shield next to your name, which is fun. So a lot of stuff for just $4.99 a month. Less than the price of whatever latte BS thing that you get at Starbucks.
That that example gets less and less it's so cheap kind of feeling, because I feel like lattes are
It's
so
roughly a tank a gallon of gas.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. But here's our schedule upcoming. We got the defensive preview coming up on Wednesday. This Thursday, the first members only right after dark. Next Monday, the 21st, is our annual season predictions episode. So all off season we get asked, how many games is SC going to win? Is SC going to go 11-1? They're going to go 10-2, 12-0. What do you think? Next Monday, we will lock in our predictions. We will walk through the season game by game, tell you our thoughts, which leads us into next Wednesday, episode 498, the first game preview of the season, looking at week 0, USC and San Jose State. So join us Wednesday, August 23rd. Thursday, August 24th is the first Run After Dark live stream show, Thursday night, 9 p.m., leading into the first game. And then, of course, Alicia, we've got another announcement. Friday, August 25th. We haven't done these in a long time. We're going to have a bit of a hangout, a meetup of sorts.
A literal meetup.
Yeah. We're gonna keep it old school and low key, which is true to us, I think. But we've talked about this for years of just going to a pizza parlor, like we're a T-ball team. So we're doing it. We're going to Shakey's on Laurel Canyon and Valley Village on Friday the 25th of August. We'll be there at 6 p.m. Come join us. Come hang out. Grab a slice of pizza. Drink whatever you want to drink, I guess, and
have
be merry.
If you're Michael, have a Diet Pepsi. If you're Alicia,
Exactly.
have a, I don't know, Bud Light, or maybe if they have a cider, I'll have a cider. And some pizza and mojo potatoes and enjoy some just talk about USC football. Our past meetups, especially the ones that we've done right before the season starts, have been a lot of fun. Just getting people together, talking about how excited we are for the season, talking about the expectations for the season, and just sort of riffing it. So if you've got the time, come on out and say hello and have a beer with us.
Yeah, it'll be fun. August 25th, the eve of college football, Friday night before the SC San Jose State game. So we're looking forward to that. But Alicia, we got a bunch of news to discuss. Really not a lot of news. One little news nugget we want to get to before we get to talking about the offense. So let's do that now, shall we? All right, we got to start with the news. The AP poll is out. The annual preseason AP poll has been released, and USC is ranked number 6. the highest ranking for the Trojans in the AP poll going into the season since 2017. It also matches the preseason coaches poll with USC at 6 as well. In the AP poll, it's Georgia number 1 with 60 first place votes, Michigan number 2 with 2 first place votes, Ohio State number 3 with 1 first place vote, followed by Alabama. First time in years and years and years they don't have any first place votes.
First time since 2015, which was when they won a national title,
Long
by the
time?
way. That they don't have a first place vote.
Yeah. LSU 5, SC is 6, Penn State 7, Florida State 8, Clemson 9, Washington 10. That is your top 10. The interesting thing for USC here is the Trojans are scheduled to face 4 teams in the preseason top 15. Number 10, Washington. SC gets at home. SC will have to go on the road to face number 13, Notre Dame in October. They will host number 14, Utah in October, and they will go on the road in November to face number 15, Oregon. Your thoughts, Alicia? Too high, too low? What are you thinking?
Just right. If we're Goldilocksing it. I said this about the coaches poll. I personally would have USC ahead of LSU. I understand why they're not in the top 5. The defense is a big problem, a big concern. I just personally would still have USC top 5 just because of the offense and because I expect the defense to be better. But when it comes down to it, I agree with one of my colleagues over at fansided.com who said today basically everything from 6 to 12 could be jumbled up and mixed up and you wouldn't feel too crazy about it.
Sure.
And I tend to agree with that. I think that you can make an argument for pretty much everybody to be up, outside of that elite group of Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and Alabama. And so, yeah, I think USC is very well placed in terms of growth here, where if they keep winning, they will be up in one of those college football playoff slots very quickly. But it really does come down to you got to win your games because your preseason ranking literally does not matter. See 2012 USC. So
Right.
that's I think that the other plus side for USC here in terms of placement is there's a lot of Pac-12 teams on USC's schedule who are ranked very highly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like USC isn't going to have opportunities to have impressive wins.
Yeah.
Assuming now part of the realm though is, as we're going to talk about next week, the front part of USC's schedule is very light and the back end is very loaded. So it will be up to the likes of Washington and Oregon and Utah to remain ranked by the time USC plays them. But the setup is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. We've talked about before, teams are usually, and I know there's 3 basic outcomes. They can be better than you think, they can be as good as you think, or they can be worse. And if they're at least any of the first 2, I think that bodes well for SC in terms of strength of schedule, which would help SC down the line when they want to get into things like the playoffs and whatnot. But I don't know. I think that this seems right to me. I don't think it's too high or too low. I think there's a right amount of skepticism in the defense to put them 6th. I've seen a lot of predictive rankings that have like Florida State in the top 4 because people think that they could get into the playoff. And I like that the AP is not a predictive poll because I find predictive polls, I don't know, like it's it's a crapshoot because when you're picking what you think the final outcome is going to be. That's not what the AP poll is, and I want my AP poll to be what it is now, and I think that SC at 6 seems a bit right. Like SC and Penn State, I think, are the 2 teams here, and LSU that are the teams that are like, you need to show that and prove that you are truly a contender before you're going to be in the top 4, and I think that's fair. I think that's fair. When you look at what USC's defense was last year,
USC's defense gets to answer that question. And then you can talk about them being in the top 4.
Yeah. So we will see how all of that comes to be. But Alicia, we got a lot to talk about the offense, the Trojan offense, which of course was very, very, very good last year. the vaunted USC offense. Let's start there. Let's look at the offensive statistics from a year ago. SC was the number 1 offense in SP plus, the number 3 offense in scoring offense, the number 3 offense in total offense, the number 3 offense in yards per play, the number 3rd passing attack in the country, averaging 335 passing yards a game. Rushing offense, a $171, mind you, that's on a per game basis, on a per rush basis. SC was much higher than that. SC was a very efficient running team when they wanted to. It was just the amount that they ran ultimately dictates where you are in terms of total rushing. It was an offense that ultimately got the quarterback to win the Heisman Trophy. Caleb Williams won the Heisman, and he was pretty damn good all season long, especially as the season went down the wire up until his injury in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah. When you look at numbers like this, when you look at just the big totals, these big numbers, where do you begin? Like, do you expect the SC to be this good on offense again going forward?
Yes. Yes, I do, because Lincoln Riley has fielded offenses that were this good in every season of his coaching career,
Yeah.
essentially. So yeah, I would expect USC to be right up there. Top 5, I would say, is an expectation for this offense. It's hard to say if the rushing offense will be more productive this coming year. It's entirely possible. I do think that the injury last year to Travis Dye may have limited a little bit of that growth. Also, the high scoring games where USC was in shootouts probably didn't help the rushing offense too much.
I'm going to push back on that. I think that SC loses Travis Dye in the Cal game, or is it Colorado? Cal? One of those.
Yeah.
In early November, and Austin Jones basically produced what Travis Dye would have produced in the subsequent games. When you look at what he did against UCLA and Notre Dame, like, he was very damn good. Like, I think this is a rushing attack that is plug and play. And Austin Jones is very good to sort of lead it. We're going to talk more about the rushing attack as we get towards the end there.
Real quick, now that I'm looking at the game by game stats, you know what killed USC's rushing offense
It's
numbers?
the Utah game.
Not that they were gonna be like top 10 or anything like that, but they wouldn't be down in the 50s. It's not just the Utah game; it's Utah and Tulane. 56 yards and 132 yards in Utah and Tulane.
Yeah.
What are those games?
It's the injury
have in
to
common?
Andrew Voorhees
And Brett Nealon,
Yeah.
and like there was just injuries were a huge factor
Yeah.
there. But to be honest, that is something that you have to discuss when you're looking at USC's offense coming into this year. Again, we're going to talk about the offensive line.
Yeah.
It's pretty thin. So that's going to be a concern for whether or not they can maintain these big numbers. Staying healthy is a big part of that.
Yeah, when you look at drive stats, SC pretty damn solid as well. The number 1 team in the country last year on points per drive, 3.76. You saw that especially midfield drives. They were number 1. Long field drops to 18th. I never know how to read the difference between like long field and midfield. Like, I'm not sure what we're supposed to glean from the difference there. More than anything, I think SC's ability to be the number 1 points per drive team overall is the bigger telling point there. Available yards, SC was 4th. He gained 65.9% of their available yards on the season, and 23% of the plays gained 10 plus yards, which is that's what you want. That's what you want, a big chunk explosive offense. I would expect that number to grow in year 2 under Lincoln Riley, especially when this is year 3 for Caleb Williams in the Lincoln Riley system. Year 2 at USC. Like, I think SC has all the ability to get better this upcoming season, which I think starts
Scary
at quarterback. And it's weird to say it starts at quarterback, but Alicia, it starts at quarterback.
I mean,
let's look into the quarterback room. The Trojans have 3 players on the roster, 3 scholarship quarterbacks. Caleb Williams, of course, the Heisman Trophy winner, returns for his junior season. Miller Moss, also a junior, but is a redshirt sophomore by trade. and he will be fighting it out with Malachi Nelson, the 5-star incoming signee from Los Alamitos. Those two are going to compete for who could be quarterback quarterback 2 behind Caleb Williams if they are needed. But I think when you look at Caleb Williams, and we just start to look at Caleb Williams' numbers last year, passing yards, 4,537, 42 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Those are exquisite numbers. These are all-time great numbers at USC. The all-time greatest season for a quarterback statistically in the history of USC football. However, it is not anywhere near the production in terms of things like efficiency, like quarterback rating, as to what Lincoln Riley was getting out of his Heisman winners at Oklahoma. When you look at Baker Mayfield, and when you look at Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts, what those guys were able to do in subsequent years, they were 30 points higher in quarterback rating, which leads me to believe that SC can be much more explosive this year. When you look at the efficiency for Caleb Williams in terms of holding on to the football, he didn't have a turnover for like the longest time last year. 42 touchdowns and 5 interceptions is a great ratio to have, but I think SC can vastly improve on things like yards per attempt. SC can get better in just the sheer explosiveness of the passing game. And I think if they do that, they're going to be even better and more opportunistic on offense, which will help them in some of those, metrics where the offense is not is top 10 instead of top 5, right? Like, which is, it's like splitting hairs a little bit, right? But I think when you're trying to win a national championship and when you have a defense that has a million question marks, which we'll get into on Wednesday, you gotta be as good as you possibly can. And I think SC can be historically good if they take that step forward. And Caleb Williams comes out with like a passer rating of like 190 this year. He's like even better than last year. The offense is going to be even better. Everybody improves from that, do they not?
Absolutely, and that's the scary thing about what Caleb Williams did last year. He was still a sophomore quarterback. He was still
he had the Oregon State game, right?
He still had the Oregon State game, yeah, and there were other periods in the season where he looked like he was having an Oregon State kind of day. And they were few and far between, and certainly outweighed by the by the sheer brilliance of most of what he did. But the fact is that you're right. He had room to grow. That is the scariest thing about that all-time performance that he had, that Heisman winning performance, is he can get better. And I think Lincoln Riley will look at him and expect him to get better. And Caleb Williams himself will look at himself and expect to get better, because we know that Caleb holds himself to a very high standard. And it's not for nothing that I think Caleb Williams has been retweeting people saying that Drake May is better than him, or that JJ McCarthy has a better is a better NFL prospect, or any of those things. He's got that chip on his shoulder, and I think it's easier to have your chip on your shoulder when you know that you weren't perfect last year and you are striving for perfection. So that should only fuel USC's offense in a very, 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 very scary way if he can take that step forward.
The crazy thing is he wasn't perfect, but he was damn near perfect. And so it seems crazy to say that he can be even better. Like, compared to what Caleb Williams showed, that, that Sam Darnold we thought Sam Darnold was what Caleb Williams was. And then Caleb showed that he's 8 steps ahead of what Sam Darnold was, right?
Well, Sam Darnold was the best thing that we'd seen up to that point. Like,
yes,
Caleb Williams
and Caleb is like even way further ahead.
It's astounding what Caleb Williams
that gap
is doing.
Exists.
Caleb Williams is doing what Patrick Mahomes is, but like 5 years ahead of schedule.
And
it's wild.
One quick note before we move on to other units that we really need to delve into here is, when I say that he can get better in terms of things like yards per attempt, those 3 years in which the Oklahoma quarterbacks were winning Heisman's or being a Heisman finalist in Jalen Hurts' case. The yards per attempt, 2017 OU or for Baker Mayfield, 11.5. Kyler Murray in 2018, 11.6. Jalen Hurts in 2019, 11.3. Caleb Williams was 9.5 last year. So he has 2 yards per pass attempt to get better with.
Mm-hmm.
That's the area. That's how does this offense improve? How does Caleb Williams improve? By making that change, by being that much more explosive. And if they do that, literally everything gets better.
And part of that is too who USC returns in terms of everybody around Caleb Williams is going to help Caleb Williams be better this year as well.
Yeah.
We were skeptical last year going in because we thought the offense would be good, but we didn't expect it to be that good because it was still year 1 in the system for everybody on that roster except for Caleb Williams and Mario Williams.
Yeah.
Now it's year 2 for everyone on that roster.
Yeah.
You can expect a step forward.
And who's he going to be throwing against or throwing to? He's going to be throwing to the wide receivers, a group of 10 dudes who are just loaded. 11 dudes now that Deuce Robinson and Malik Brown are there. The Trojans are loaded. 3 returning starters, I guess you could call them. Brendan Rice, Taj Washington, and Mario Williams. But I think when you look at what SC has here, there's essentially like a top 6 that could be like pick your poison here. Mario Williams, Taj Washington, Dorian Singer, the transfer from Arizona, who was a first team All Pac-12er last year, Brendan Rice, Raleek Brown, Michael Jackson III. Like this team is just flat out loaded at wide receiver.
Yes, it is. It is loaded, talent on the high end, and also depth. It's one of those things where it's hard to pick starters, not because you're not sure about any of the guys who are out there, but because you're too sure about all of the guys that are out there. Like Dorian Singer led the Pac-12 in receiving last year. Mario Williams was outstanding when he was healthy and was USC's second leading receiver last year. Clearly already had a connection with Caleb Williams and it was working in his favor. Taj Washington, probably the most underrated player in the Pac-12 potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Just production from him left and right. Brendan Rice, the game he had against Tulane, the standout.
If that's the Brendan Rice that plays this season, he's going to be insanely good. The
standout performances that kid is capable of are immense.
Yeah. And
you and I both, I know, love Michael Jackson III. We love Kyron Hudson. We're excited about the newcomers, Deuce Robinson and Raleek Brown, and Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon. Like every single, to a man, if any of these guys had to start this year for USC, I would not be worried in the slightest. I feel like these are all starting caliber players, with the only question mark hanging over the true freshmen who that's just asking, like that's putting too much on them. I know. But I wouldn't be upset about any combination of a starting group for this group. It's outrageous.
Yeah, 100%. I think that when you look at the stuff that has happened in camp too, like, you know, Ryan Karchi of the LA Times has tweeted that Taj Washington's been sort of limited for a couple of days with an injury. Well, Lincoln Riley said that Zach Branch, Mario Williams, and Raleek Brown have really benefited from that. And that's the kind of thing that you're going to see here. If somebody goes down, there's 3-4 guys to step up. And that's the kind of depth you want.
Yes, and we know that Deuce Robinson has gotten rave reviews. We know that Zach Branch has already been working with the first team, with the first team offense at times.
Yeah.
So that those guys are already stepping up. But at the same time, you know, before camp started, we had questions on the regular about like what are you hearing about Jacoby Lane? What are you hearing about Jacoby Lane? Well, guess what? First couple of weeks of camp, all I heard about Jacoby Lane was like, oh my gosh, this kid is amazing. He's a freak. He got ridiculous size and he's out here just making plays left and right. Like that's where the guys on the bottom of the pecking order for USC, like Jacoby Lane right now, are the guys also getting absolutely rave reviews and looking like they could contribute as true freshmen as well. So The only problem USC has here is I don't know how you keep everybody happy in this rotation. There's too many mouths to feed and too many guys worth, deserving of being fed the ball, and only so many footballs to go around on a given game, especially when the NCAA is trying to shrink the size of the number of plays in games and speed up games. It seems like an impossible dynamic to maintain.
It's very clear why you end up having roster casualties like Kyle Ford and TJ Williams, because
and Gary Bryant Jr.
Gary Bryant, like this receiving core is so loaded, and they are down those three guys. John Jackson the third too. Like it's nuts. We got a tweet, or you got a tweet when you tweeted out that we're going to be talking about this on Twitter on Sunday. This comes from Howie. He wants to know about Raleek Brown and his possible roles, Deuce Robinson, and what wide receiver or tight end will look like. Let's talk about Raleek Brown here for a second. Are you on board? Not that you need to be on board, but like, where are you on the whole, like, Raleek Brown? Is he a wide receiver? Is he a running back thing? He's now listed in the wide receiver room in terms of the roster. Where do you sit on him?
Where I sit on him is, I think USC should maybe embrace the thing that like recruiting services do, where they just, a dude doesn't fit perfectly into one position, so you just put the ATH next to his name.
Right.
Just call him an athlete. It's fine. I think we can expect to see Raleek Brown used in both positions. He's listed as a wide receiver because they have to list him somewhere, and technically he's in that room for camp, but they're going to put him in the backfield and they're going to let him roll from there. They're going to hand off to him. They're going to throw the ball to him. They're going to run sweeps. They're going to run, passing designs and swing passes and whatever else you can imagine coming out of a Lincoln Riley offense. I think they're going to use Raleek Brown in that way. I'm sort of not stressing it because it's clear they want to find ways to get him onto the field, and using him in the slot or having him lined up at one of the receiver positions gives them more opportunities to do that. My only concern about this would be the potential problem of that we saw at times with like Adoree Jackson, where the package that they had for him was then telegraphed that like if he's in the game, the ball's going to him. So that's something that defense could know. But Lincoln Riley is such an offensive genius. I don't think I'm worried about that even.
I don't think that would be the case either, because Adoree was someone who played defense, so there was a reason that you could
only have him out there so often. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't think that's going to be the case with Raleek. I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly how he's used. Is he going to be the Percy Harvin type who's all over the field? I think SC fans have sort of fantasized about the idea of Percy Harvin since Percy Harvin. And we saw a little bit of that with Reggie Bush. Certainly, you saw that a little bit of it with guys like Adoree Jackson. We saw Amon-Ra St. Brown started at running back for a time against Colorado on a fateful night in Boulder. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Raleek Brown. I think it's going to be interesting to see if he can put everything together and sort of be what I expect, which is someone who can kind of take over for my guy
Dom Davis down the sideline.
Yeah, Dom Davis.
It's been a while since we get to pull out the Dom Davis.
Well, I had to find it. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, and he can sort of be what we thought Dom Davis could be.
Yeah.
He's Dom Davis like 4.0, given the recruiting hype from Raleek Brown versus Dom Davis.
Rama Murdy in the chat, I think, makes a good point of Raleek can be USC's version of Deebo Samuel. And I think that's
the modern equivalent.
That's got to be the way to sort of approach it. And
you can line him up in the backfield, but he's basically a receiver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think if anyone can figure it out, it's Lincoln Riley. That's the nice thing about having a coach like Lincoln Riley in charge. I don't necessarily have to worry about it too much. And to be frank, if Raleek doesn't create a role, doesn't have a role for him, isn't isn't contributing in the ways that everybody wants. It's almost like the tight end situation where like I have zen about the tight ends because yes, I want to see passes to tight ends up the seam, but also if USC is scoring 50 points a game, I really don't care about how those points are scored or
Yeah.
what position group is responsible for any of those points, so long as they're getting scored.
Well, before we move to the tight ends, I want to talk about Deuce Robinson really quick because Howie mentioned it in that tweet. What do we expect from Deuce Robinson? We know that he's going to play wide receiver, which is basically what we said Drake London was. A tight end in a wide receiver's body, even though they never called him a tight end, even though he's basically a tight end. And now Deuce Robinson is basically a tight end, but he's listed as a wide receiver officially, like Drake London. Do you expect Drake London freshman year kind of vibes from him? Because I think he can be that type of guy on the inside to kind of maybe fill in for the the lack of tight end depth that USC has. Maybe you see him running routes that maybe Josh Follow was running before on the inside and maybe in the red zone and whatnot early on. But there's so many dudes that I think he provides flexibility and does something that nobody else does. But I don't know that we're going to see him actually have the impact that Drake London had as a true freshman. Just because there's so many dudes.
There's so many dudes. That's the bigger issue. I actually wouldn't be surprised too. I saw some tweets from like Shotgun Spratling and others that he was getting work with the outside receivers as well. So I think we could see Deuce Robinson used inside outside. But given that he's a freshman, given that you've got Brendan Rice and Mario Williams and Dorian Singer and all of those guys and Josh Washington and Zach Branch and all of those guys who are going to be competing, I don't want to put too much expectation on Deuce Robinson. I think you let him organically find his sweet spot in that offense.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Deuce Robinson a little bit of the way that we've seen Kyron Hudson and Michael Jackson III, where like he pops up once a game to make a big play, but it's only once a game because he's a freshman and there's 6 other dudes who are in front of him trying to also eat as much as possible.
Yeah, let's talk about the tight ends. We got a message in the chat from where was it? I just saw one. From your favorite five head, who says tight ends hardly exist in this offense. Deuce Robinson was turned into a receiver his first day on campus. Yeah, I think that tight ends, as you think of them, don't exactly exist. USC's tight ends, I think, will function like Raleek Brown functioned, where we think will function in the sense that they're going to be lined up on the inside, spread out wide. They're going to be lined up in the backfield as a blocker instead of a ball carrier in the backfield, sort of as an H-back. But they can also provide a different physical skill set than sort of Raleek Brown does. So they can be just sort of different there. And you're going to see tight ends in this offense. I mean, Mark Andrews surely ate a lot in the Oklahoma offense back at OU with Lincoln Riley calling the shots. So this is a tight end group, only 4 players. Jude Wolfe is back for his redshirt senior season. Lake McCree is basically the only returning starter here, and who we would project to be the starter. Carson Tabarachi is the Utah transfer, is sort of bounced from position to position to position. Tight end is where he fits right now. And Kate Eldridge is a 3-star tight end who signed in for the Trojans this year out of Linden, Washington. Gone is Malcolm Epps, transferred to Pitt. Josh Follow has gone on to the NFL, finally, after a long SC career that had a great start and sort of an interesting finish this past year with a couple touchdowns. And Ethan Ray had a medical retirement. So I don't know what else there is to say about the tight ends. Like McCree, I think we all think is good. I think he's head and shoulders better than the other dudes as it stands right now. That could change if Jude Wolfe performs to the level that I think people thought that he could be coming out of high school. But Lake McCree, I think, is a stud, and I think he's just another option along with Raleek Brown and Deuce Robinson to give you another type of body and option in the passing game.
Yeah, Steven in the chat says, mark my words, tight end's going to get some serious action this year. Lake McCree is going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I agree that Lake McCree is going to be a useful piece of this offense.
Sure.
I think that the news of like the death of the tight end position at USC is just greatly exaggerated. I think we could see Jude Wolf slot directly into the role that Josh Follow played for USC last year, where it was a primarily blocking role, but you need those guys in there, and then you catch a few passes when you catch people off guard. I think like McCree, I think Jude Wolf is perfectly capable of that.
Sure.
If he can stay healthy. I think Lake McCree is a very exciting receiving option for USC, who can also do the job of a blocking tight end as you need him.
Yeah.
So I think USC has a couple of guys in there, and obviously, we just don't with Cade and Carson Tabaracci, we just don't know. We have not seen them in sort of real action, so
right.
We'll see from there. But I think the tight ends will be on the field for USC. But they'll also face the same problem that, like you said, with Raleek Brown. It's going to be, you're going to have your spots where you're on the field, and you're going to get taken off the field in favor of a full wide receiver set. And if Raleek Brown is getting used, yeah, you might have to take Lake McCree off the field for a play or
and with Deuce Robinson
or mix and match or whatever. It's going to be. It's going to be difficult for the tight ends to put up like Mark Andrews numbers, because USC doesn't need them to put up Mark Andrews type numbers.
Right. Yes, I think that's the important thing, because even when you look back and like cream your pants looking at Fred Davis numbers,
USC didn't have receivers that year.
There was a reason Fred Davis caught all the passes.
Yes.
Go look at the 2007 wide receiver core. They were led by Vidal Hazelton, and you mentioned Vidal Hazelton on the podcast, and people were like, "Oh, Vidal Hazel, that's someone I haven't thought about in a long time." Yes, exactly, and there's a reason for that, right? Like, I love Fred Davis as much as anybody else does, but like
that was a perfect storm for him.
It was, and
by the way, Fred Davis was essentially Deuce Robinson coming out of. He was a wide receiver.
Right, he was a wide receiver.
So it's he was built for that role, and he was built for that season, and USC used him to the fullest. The fact of the matter is USC doesn't like Fred Davis in this offense. Greatest tight end in USC history in this offense would not be a featured receiver.
Would not be a featured receiver. I think he would absolutely eat, but he would not be the number one target.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the running backs. The Trojans bring back Austin Jones and Darwin Barlow, the TCU transfer, back for year 3 at USC. Austin Jones, the Stanford transfer, back for year 2. And they got 3 newcomers. Marshawn Lloyd, the transfer from South Carolina. Chris Trevino from USCFootball.com has tweeted out that he's been rolling with the first team, it looks like. Interesting, because when you put together our little projections on these little graphics that we have here on YouTube, we're just going like the basic chalk pick of who could be the projected starter. We taking it very conservatively. We said Austin Jones.
And I don't think that's wrong, by the way.
We'll see.
Running back rotations in practice
they're always
are tricky.
Yeah.
Because they're always trying to number one, keep the running backs healthy. Number two, just sort of like, I think there were from my days watching practice, there were many days where it was like one day, one guy's with the first team, the next day, down with the second team, because the top 2 options are essentially 1A and 1B. And that's the way that I would approach Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah.
1A and 1B in ways that might end up being very similar to the way that Travis Dye and Austin Jones last year were. I think Travis Dye very clearly 1A, but it's not like they weren't willing to hand the ball off to Austin Jones as a guy, and he proved that once Travis Dye was gone, Austin Jones stepped right in, and like you said, did not experience a drop in productivity from the number 1 running back spot. So I think USC has to feel very confident about both of those guys as options that are going to see a lot of run next year, or will run in 2 weeks this year.
Right. Yeah. Austin Jones, 300-yard rushing games last year. One of them with Travis Dye healthy. 12 carries and a $110 against Fresno State in week 3, but 2 with Travis Dye hurt in the 2 biggest games of the year, UCLA Notre Dame. 120, 154 yards, and really solidified himself, I thought, as the guy heading into this season to be the starter. But the great thing about running back is you never know. You never know. Things can always change and things can always move around. And I think SC will be best served with having the best guy tote the rock the most times. And whether or not that's, Austin Jones, who had 705 yards last year, or whether it's Marshawn Lloyd, who had 573 and 9 touchdowns in South Carolina, I think is, it doesn't matter. You want the guy who's going to be have the biggest impact. And we saw that in the spring game. I thought all those guys looked good. Lloyd, Joyner, Marion Peterson, like those guys looked good. Want to give a big shout out, by the way, to Alex in the chat.
Alex
coming through as always with the super chat. It says if some players can play both wide receiver and DB, can a tight end play both on offense and defense? Do you remember a tight end ever also playing on defense?
Well, if anyone would do it, it would be Carson Tabaracci, who is a linebacker by trade, who's filling a gap at tight end.
There's been fullbacks. I can think of Lonnie Ford. There was another guy, Luther Brown. Was Luther Brown someone who?
Luther Brown was definitely a
dabbled?
linebacker who might have dabbled on.
I think he dabbled at fullback.
Yeah,
a couple of guys have gone both ways that way. If you want a tight end linebacker crossover, there's this league called the Arena League. Highly recommend it because that's exactly their dudes who just thrive at that. I can't think of a role where you would see it here.
Not in
Grudigood in high school, surely.
Yeah,
but like this is one of those situations where I think that it's such wear on your body to be a tight end that playing both ways, it just I don't think it works.
Yeah, in the modern game, you don't need it. You don't need
right. Your favorite five head says Owen Marichich at Stanford was both ways. There you go. It's a good example. And he also says running back is a plug and play position for USC defenses are geared to stop Caleb in the passing game. So the running game is there if Riley wants to run the ball. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk about the running game. Let's talk about what the offensive line statistics sort of look like for the Trojans as a way to talk about the offensive line here. SC last year, in terms of run blocking, was incredible. And I think that it paved the way for the running game to be efficient on a per carry basis. I think USC has an elite running game on a per carry basis. That is key nuance. We talk about total sum and you look at SC being ranked 53rd in total run offense. Oh, that's nothing to write home about. That's very middle of the road. Yes, I agree with you. But on a per carry basis, SC is an elite running attack. And that's because 61.9% of their carries last year gained 5 yards to give them an opportunity rate of 61.9. Average line yards 3.17, which is fourth in the country. Fourth in the country in terms of power success rate, which means they were getting first downs on short yardage on 86.5% of their carries. This is what you want. And and to the point made in the chat, like, yeah, that makes it plug and play. Whether it's Dye or Austin Jones or Barlow, whoever it is, Dominic Davis, like they're going to pick up yards with an offensive line that runs these blocking schemes and fits in an offense that has all these other perimeter talents where defenses have to take everything seriously.
Yes, in this offense, the run game exists to keep the defense honest.
Yeah.
And they kept defenses honest because if you focus too much on if you get too caught up in the Caleb Williams of it all, yes, you can hand it off to Travis Dye and he will get 6 yards a pop and
100%.
And USC can hurt you that way and that way you can't go you can't go all in on stopping USC's passing game because the running game will hurt you when they run the ball. That is all you need. That's the exact thing. I think it's a credit to the scheme, first and foremost, to the offensive line executing that scheme, and then to the running backs being capable of hitting the hole and getting the yards that are made available to them. Um, I think the rushing totals at a certain point are irrelevant when you're putting up 48 points a game.
Right.
And you have our number one in opportunity
it's
rate.
choice.
Yeah. You're making the choice to have your passing offense be your focal point, and why not when you have the talent that USC has in that side of the ball?
Yeah, and case in point, I think you look at 2018 and Oklahoma's numbers, number 1 in the country on yards per carry.
Mhm.
Again, per carry basis. And the crazy part is you look at their overall numbers, they were 11th in terms of yards per game, 247. So they ran the ball more. And so I don't think the running game functions as like an alternative to the passing attack. I don't think Lincoln Riley is that guy. He is not Graham Harrell in that sense.
Mhm.
He is way more willing to run. Having said that, when you have an offense that has Caleb Williams, you're going to put some faith in Caleb Williams. But at the same time, he's had offenses led by Heisman Trophy winners in 2018 with Kyler Murray.
See,
and they were still insanely good on the ground. Mind you, a lot of that was Kyler Murray also running the ball.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is like Caleb is perfectly capable of running and will make plays with his feet and stuff. But he's not Kyler Murray as a runner. He's
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is the difference that we can tell immediately from the Graham Harrell to the Lincoln Riley of it all is not just willingness to run, but like an understanding of when to run, when it will be effective, when it will not be effective, and thus don't try it. Like all of those things are what sets this offense apart from what USC used to have.
Yeah, 100%. Calix Rose in the chat says you need the run game to close out games in the third and fourth quarter.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I thought SC did that well. When you look at the UCLA game, I thought they really hit the run really solidly in the second half with Austin Jones. You saw it early on in the season against Fresno State when both Dye and Austin Jones had over 100 yards. We know the Notre Dame game SC controlled on the ground.
And hopefully USC has more opportunities to do that this year with the defense not, giving up touchdowns and putting pressure on the offense to maybe not go into full shutdown mode the way that I think we would like to see them do.
Yeah. Let's talk about the offensive line. SC has 15 guys in the offensive line on scholarship, coached by Josh Henson. This is an interesting group because, of course, SC loses All-American Andrew Voorhees and Brett Nealon. Bobby Haskins is gone. Cortland Ford is transferred to Kentucky. Jason Rodriguez is transferred to Nevada. Max Gibbs to Jackson State. There's a lot of attrition there. But there's still a lot of guys coming back. 3 starters are back. Justin Dietich, Mason Murphy, and Jonah Monheim. And you get Michael Tarquin, a starter from Florida. You get Jarrett Kingston, a starter from Washington State. You get Emmanuel Pregnon, a starter from Wyoming. And just like last year, you have an offensive line that is led by your homegrown talent in Dietich, Mason, and Monheim, augmented with strong transfer talent, except I think these dudes are better than the transfer guys they got last year. When you look at you compare it to Bobby Haskins, I think Bobby Haskins was perfectly fine, but Jarrett Kingston was someone that guys at Washington State thought he was going to go on to the NFL.
Yeah.
And he decided to come back for another year, and transfer to SC.
Which is why there is a typo on this slide. Kingston is a projected starter over Mason Murphy.
Yeah.
Just for the record. But yes, the USC was aggressive in the offensive line transfer portal and got guys that were coveted by many, many, many other programs out there, and filled the gaps that we would have spent a lot of time this offseason discussing how the offensive line was a huge worry because of the loss of the starters, Nealon and Voorhees, et cetera.
Yeah.
And it would have been a big sense of anxiety around this offensive line, and that anxiety has been lessened considerably because of who they brought in. Now my anxiety about the offensive line is completely and utterly just about depth. I'm stressing the depth here because the sort of the top 6 I feel good about. I feel better in some positions than others. Elijah Page, the freshman, Alani Noah, the freshman, have been getting strong reviews in camp, and that is a positive. But like at center, for instance, if Justin Dedich is injured the way that Brett Nealon got injured last year, there is no Justin Dedich to slide over this time.
Right.
Andrew Malek, I just don't know how much you can depend on him to step in and be a starting center. That is a huge, huge concern that I have. So injuries will play a large role in whether or not this offensive line is a strength or a limiting factor to
Right.
this offense.
Yeah, let's talk about the projected depth chart here. You've got listed left tackle Jonah Monheim, left guard Emmanuel Pregnon, center Justin Dedich, right guard Jarrett Kingston, and right tackle Michael Tarquin, with Mason Murphy being the returning starter who would sort of be the 6th guy there at right tackle on the 2 deep, but also flexible to move elsewhere if necessary. The second string guys that you've projected here are Elijah Page, working from left to right, left tackle, left guard, Gino Quinones, Andrew Millick at center, and Cooper Lovelace at right guard.
Yeah, it's a 2 deep.
It is a 2 deep, yes.
there are bodies there.
I think, like, as a know nothing about the offensive line and someone who can only speak to what the outcomes were, and I can't tell you about their you know their technique or any of those things, and I wouldn't lie to you and claim I could. I think on paper the offensive line here looks about as solid as it could be without having Andrew Voorhees there.
Yes.
Because we knew Andrew Voorhees was going into last year as a potential high first round pick. Obviously, he got hurt and changed that. And he was a 7th rounder, but I don't think
the fact
there's
that
a
he
high
got
first.
drafted at all speaks to how
Yes.
what a prospect he was.
I don't think there's a high first rounder here, but this is a solid group, and I think that when you look at what SC has done the last 2 seasons, both seasons that you could have doubt about the offensive line, and they've surpassed that in terms of looking at the numbers, in terms of rushing run blocking, then I think that this is a solid place. The problem is SC last year was susceptible in pass blocking. And this is what I find so interesting about USC's offensive line is the dichotomy there, because you were talking to me about there was an anonymous report. What was it from?
An anonymous Pac-12 defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Said that people thought that USC's offensive line was really good, but that was just Caleb Williams being able to run.
Which I think is valid.
Which in pass blocking, absolutely, I think you could make the case. Yes.
There were many games, especially early on in the season, when he was just running for dear life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
On every single play.
Now the topic falls apart when you look at the run.
When you look at the run blocking, SC was arguably the best offensive line in the country.
Yeah, that's not just Caleb Williams. That's people doing their jobs in the scheme. But this is also why my anxiety is 100% tied to just if there's a rash of injuries, you're going to be starting freshmen on the line, and that is always just a scary thing to be considering.
Yeah.
But Josh Henson has done a good enough job in his first year to suggest there's not going to be, like, when USC failed to get Bill Bedenbaugh from Oklahoma, there was the sense of, okay, is Lincoln Riley's scheme going to rise to the occasion here, and can Josh Henson do that job, or was it really just the best offensive line coach in the country propping things up a little bit? And we learned last year that was not the case, because clearly these statistics that we're looking at, opportunity rate, power success rate, average line yards, means number one, Lincoln Riley's scheme is well designed and puts these players in position to succeed on those fronts.
Yes.
Number two, that Josh Henson was doing a good enough job to not screw up what that scheme is capable of doing.
Yes.
And number three, that Caleb Williams is enough of a talent that he can make up for whatever other deficiencies were coming in the passing in past blocking.
Right.
And
if he was a stone-footed quarterback, if he was insert random USC stone
Matt Leinart.
John David Booty.
Yes.
The sack rate here that says 42nd last year, the SC ranked, it would be like 82nd. Without Caleb Williams. So,
but you still got Caleb Williams. And really, what you need from this offensive line is literally just to stay pat. And the transfers that they brought in, the players that are currently in that starting five, I think are perfectly capable of mirroring what USC did last year.
I think so too. I still think that you obviously would have wanted to have Bill Bedenbaugh. At the same time, I like to your point. I think that we saw that the scheme itself does at least half the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some of that work is with Caleb Williams, a quarterback. And yeah, the horror if SC didn't have Caleb Williams, but they do. So.
Well, and the question of what USC will do if they don't have Caleb Williams is one that is the core of the backup quarterback debate. Mm-hmm. And you have Miller Moss, who will have to operate differently in the offense because he is not Caleb Williams.
Right.
And you've got Malachi Nelson, who is probably too young to take over relative to Miller Moss. But if you needed him to be your savior,
we've talked about this before.
There's worse outcomes.
We probably should have talked about this when we were talking about the quarterbacks. That I think one of the interesting questions about the quarterbacks is if you have to go to a QB2 situation. I personally think, and maybe this is just my conjecture, I think that it would be a situation of temporary QB2 is Miller Moss, long-term QB2 is Malachi Nelson. Hopefully, if you're in SC's case, you don't want to see that answer ever be presented for you. But I think that's what it would be.
Based on tweets I've seen from practice, I think Miller Moss is pretty firmly QB2. But I
which is a good thing. I think it's a good thing. You want the guy who's been around.
Yeah.
With the experience of being around there. Yeah.
But if a knock on all the wood, if say a 2019 JT Daniels happened, it would be very interesting to see what Lincoln would do about the short-term QB2 versus long-term QB2. That's definitely a debate we would have to have. I look forward to not having to have that debate.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got a bunch of stuff in the mailbag to get to, but before we do that, big shout out to Fighting on MC in the chat who gave us a super chat. So big cheers of my water.
Says happy to see you on YouTube. Happy to be on YouTube. Happy to be here with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the mailbag, shall we?
You've got mail.
All right, we got to start with a Rant Line call, Alicia, that we got from Eric.
Hi, Michael, Alicia. This is Eric from Salina, Texas. Thank you very much for your podcast. You do a great job. I haven't heard a lot of discussion about special teams, but I just know in the last season there were some head-scratcher performances and even discussion about why Coach Riley wouldn't look to get his own special teams coach. If there's a special part of the game, it's a phase of the game that has to give attention to it. It's great that Riley Brown was named to special teams in the media guide. That's great, and the new kicker. But I haven't heard a whole lot of discussion about what changes are going to come in the special teams to shore up this part of our team. Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Alicia, what say you?
I have long said that special teams are a crapshoot. When you've got a special team, when you've got a dedicated special teams coach taking up one of your assistant coaching slots, people complain. When you don't, people complain. When you have one, your special teams can be really good. When you have one, your special teams can be really bad. When you don't have one, your special teams can be perfectly fine. When you don't have one, they can be very bad. And it sort of goes from there. I think that for now I am perfectly content with the setup that USC has in their full-time coaching. If special teams is a huge liability again this year, then I will be willing to change my mind on that about whether or not USC needs a dedicated special teams coach. But for right now, I just think back to, we have friends who called him John Badster.
Yeah. And he was supposed to be the best special teams coach in the country.
And he was for a second.
When he got to SC,
legitimately, USC special teams was great for a minute there, and then they were really bad for a minute there, and I could not explain to you what the difference was. And we were fielding questions every week from people saying, why is USC spending so much time in practice on special teams? And there's got to be a sweet spot, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. And
I think the most satisfying answer is that just like strength and conditioning, this is a position group that I think you can only talk about in hindsight because of all the reasons that you mentioned. Tim in the chat says I'll solve half the special teams problems. Fair catch every kickoff. Done.
That is my number one.
And this is one of the things that I think that Lincoln should have put his foot down last year about, okay, we're not going to have a special teams coach. Then let's not overthink it. Let's just fair catch everything and be conservative. Because special teams is the one area where I think you can be extremely conservative and be fine. Don't field a single kickoff.
It's when you get greedy and
you get the ball to 25,
and you've got talented guys like Mario Williams and Raleek Brown, and they're chomping at the bit to go out there and make a play.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you shouldn't need special teams to be winning games for you. Your goal in the modern game is to not have special teams lose games for you.
Right.
So number one, you need to fair catch every kickoff and every punt. Just catch it. And if dudes muff punts, take them off that duty and put a new dude in who's not going to muff the punt or the kickoff or whatever. Number two, find the kicker with the biggest leg you have and
strongest
have them.
Leg. It doesn't have to be the biggest leg.
The strongest leg possible.
And Peter Crouch has a long leg and good at kicking.
I mean, go to the soccer team. Find somebody who can kick the ball out of the end zone every time.
So Calix Rose says the kicking game should be improved. I agree with when you look at like Dennis Lynch.
Well, and you've got Eddie
coming back, and
Eddie Zaplicki is going to help a lot.
The best punter in the Pac-12 transfers to SC. I think certainly helps. Gone are the days that SC is banking on a certain USC podcaster to hype up a certain Australian punter. But like, yeah, I think that when people complain, they're not talking about when people are talking about coachable special teams, they're talking about the return game. I don't think people are talking about the kicking game because the kicking game
the defense
feels less coachable. Does that make sense? Like, or is that just me just talking out of my ass?
No,
here?
you need the kicking game. The technical side of it is a skill that those players. You need somebody to help them develop that. But
I nothing burgered the kicking and punting game last year. Like, I can't even tell you a single thing about like what happened positively or negatively. Like my brain just doesn't remember it.
The issue was on coverage.
It was on coverage and it was on return.
Obviously the Mario Williams of it all.
The Mario Williams moment. Yes. Which Kenny says in the chat that you win the Tulane game if you fair catch the balls. Yes. You do. Yes. Just be conservative. Be conservative. Like it's the one aspect in football that you can literally win games by opting not to play. Don't buy the lotto tickets. You don't need to buy the lotto. You have the best offense in college football.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need the lotto tickets on a return for? You don't need to risk injury. You don't need to risk fumbling. You don't need to risk any of those things. I get it.
And by the way,
kick return is so fun to watch.
By the way, you survive special teams miscues if your defense isn't giving up 50 points a game too. Like,
this is
so
true.
A lot of, like, to me, special teams only becomes a massive talking point if your offense or your defense is not is not doing their job. Because even if there are special teams miscues, you can shrug them off as special teams miscues if the other two elements of the game that are far more important are taking care of their business. So last year, a lot of the special teams talk to me was a reflection of the defense as much as anything.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's go to a question from Cameron in the chat. Cameron from Frisco, Texas. Other than Caleb Williams, who do you think can be a first-team All-American at the end of the season on offense?
On offense, okay. I think you can highlight Jonah Monheim and Justin Dietich as potential. It's hard with the center though, because I don't know the center situation across the country well enough to say.
But who does though?
I mean, who
good rushing team, veteran name. I think that's half
Justin
the battle
Dietich.
for the offensive line.
Yeah. And then I think you're looking at one of the wide receivers, Dorian Singer. If he does what he did last year, I think Mario Williams could take that step up. Those would be my picks. So I'll give you the two picks on the offensive line: Jonah Monheim, Justin Dietich potentially, and on the wide receiver spot, I would go with Dorian Singer and Mario Williams. I don't think there's a chance USC gets an All-American running back because, as we just talked about,
you'd need 2,000 yards.
Yes,
there's too many teams.
There are primary rushing teams that are going to be handing the ball off every day.
Yes,
yeah.
There's gonna be a kid at Air Force who has 1,800 yards that SC can't compete against.
Yes.
Right. So who do I think is All-American caliber? Dorian Singer. Who do I think is going to be an All-American? I kind of side with you about an offensive line guy, because there is a world in which, I think Dorian Singer is someone who's capable of having like 1,800 receiving yards and 100 catches and 20 touchdowns. He is capable of doing that as a player, as is Mario Williams, as is Taj Washington. But there's no opportunity to do that in this offense when there's so many other dudes. Like you're gonna have to share the ball. I think it'll be good for your film, because you're going to be able to have your big moments in this offense, and that's probably going to be good for your draft case. Which is why teams like Alabama and Ohio State turn out all these drafted guys, which SC wants to get back into doing. But in terms of winning individual awards, I don't think that's going to help you in a production-based position on offense like wide receiver. Let's go to a question from Kenny. Though it may be somewhat of a spoiler for the preview, with the AP preseason poll out, who are your playoff picks?
You want me to give them?
If
we're going to save them,
let's save this for next week.
Okay. Save
this for next week, because I first of all, my answer is a total cop out, which is the Pac-12 champion, the SEC champion, the Big Ten champion, and the best and the third place SEC team. Those are my four picks.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet.
But other than that, actually naming them, I think we're Kenny save that for next week in the season predictions episode. Marty says, what do you think will be the identity for this year's offense? Pass first and run second, or a balanced attack or run to set up the pass? I think it's going to be the identity that it was last year and the year before and all those things under Lincoln Riley, which is attacking space. And how do you attack the space depends on what the defense gives you. And I think it depends on, ideally I think things are pass first, but that doesn't mean that this team is not going to run too.
Yes, and remember what we've long said is that not all handoffs are just handoffs.
Right.
There are also extended handoffs.
I don't know that we're going to have to press this button too much.
I choose not to run.
We can only hope. USC had 515 pass attempts last year, 437 rushing attempts.
Yeah. Clearly, they're going to pass way more than
they're going to pass more than they run. But I think you will see balance. it will be a relatively balanced offense for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not in terms of sheer production, but I think it'll be closer to 50-50. SJ says predictions on who Alicia will be drooling over this year.
Makes me drool. He makes me drool. Okay. I think Lake McCree is gonna have some drool worthy moments.
Okay. I could see it.
Deuce Robinson probably.
Lake McCree's a good pick because he might be someone who catches all of 8 passes, but they
if
might
they're
be a
up the
memorable 8
seam,
passes.
I'm just
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said Deuce Robinson, you said?
I said Deuce Robinson probably.
Yeah, I could see it.
I don't know. I think I'm curious which running back could be that. Like, Marshawn Lloyd might.
I think Lloyd could be the dude. Quentin Joyner, I really liked in the spring game.
Yeah.
Funny on MC says, do you think Caleb will try to stay in the pocket this season rather than take off running?
I think we will see him protect himself a little bit more this season.
I think so too. One of my fears, and this is, I acknowledge, this is USC trauma speaking. One of my biggest fears in life is a player you enjoy watching regressing because of the new responsibilities that they have. And no team excels in doing this than the 2010s USC Trojans.
Specifically at quarterback.
Specifically at quarterback.
Yeah.
Name a quarterback that got better.
Single one.
Even Barkley regressed in year 4.
Kessler, Barkley, Darnold.
Kessler's senior season, not anywhere near as good as his junior season. Slovis was just regressed every year.
Yeah.
Darnold was not as good as junior as he was his sophomore year. Like, this is a thing. And so much of it comes down to, and we saw it with Barkley, and we explained it away as well with Matt Barkley. Like, this is because he's trying to throw downfield more, and he's being more confident, and like he's trying to trust his receivers more, and he's trying to make a bigger play and all this stuff. And I think the crazy part is you can squint and look at the numbers and kind of buy that there's merit in that. Jameis Winston famously did this at Florida State too. But like when you look at the numbers from 2011 to, I'm pulling them up right now. 2011 Matt Barkley, yards per attempt was 7.9. In 2012, it was 8.5. So it improved.
Now the thing,
but his interceptions doubled. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think with specific to Lincoln Riley quarterbacks, though, I think you should feel pretty good
because they haven't done that.
Spencer Rattler might be the only one that's an example. Well, to be fair,
but Spencer Rattler is the only quarterback that he's ever started
that he's ever given up on.
Did not get to an elite level
because Baker Mayfield legitimately got better every year. Even Baker Mayfield's 2016 season is stunningly good,
and his last 3 seasons were all elite.
And he got even better in 2017.
He got marginally better because there wasn't much room to get better.
Kyler and Jalen Hurts are not good examples because they only got 1 year to start each.
But they didn't regress on
they certainly didn't regress from what they had done from what they had done previous in their career. Whether Hurts as a starter at Alabama or Murray as a backup to Baker.
Yes.
So yes, I think that Lincoln Riley does not have a track record of his quarterbacks taking a step back as they've developed through his system.
Yes. So I think it's very possible that there is some sort of middle ground here, where middle ground in the sense that, as Walter in the chat says, do those quarterbacks have Lincoln Riley as coach? No. And 1,000%. I think there's a middle ground here where I think it's possible that the interceptions that Caleb Williams has,
he can get way more unlucky.
He can get unlucky. He can also take more risks, and his interceptions can double from 5 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he can still be better. because we talked about it. His yards per attempt this past season 9.1, which is what 2.5 yards less than Kyler Murray was doing. How do you get to those 2.5 yards? By taking more risk and throwing downfield that might mean one more interception every 2 to 3 games. And suddenly you've doubled your interception total, but you've improved everything else. So I think there's a chance where you look at it and you're like, the pristine numbers in terms of like interceptions don't look as good, but everything else looks better.
Yeah.
And so maybe that comes from this place of he tries to stay in the pocket and run less by trying to do more with his arm. Maybe that, to go back to the heart of what MC is asking here, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. The flip side of this is you look at what the guys were doing on the ground at Oklahoma, and they were still running the ball a lot in their final seasons. Mind you, Baker's sort of the only one that we can sort of now I'm curious to see Baker's rushing numbers from year to year, but like Baker's the only one that we have a track record that we can truly look at.
Baker's also the least runnable of the quarterbacks that
but Baker was very mobile.
Yeah, mobile, but like not Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts.
So
or
2015,
Spencer Rattler mobile.
Baker runs 141 times for 405 as his sophomore. 2016, 78 times for 177. So he runs less, much less. And then as a senior, 97 times for 311, which he runs slightly more, but still way less than he did as a sophomore, but he's more efficient.
Yeah.
In terms of his yardage, so he probably picks his spots better.
I think what you're talking about here, it all narrows down to efficiency. I think we can see Caleb just get much, much more efficient in every aspect of the game.
He picks his spots better. He might have more yards or similar yards, but fewer attempts.
Mm-hmm.
And ends up looking downfield and trusting his arm a little bit more. Or making those like Mahomes-like throws. I mean, you look at his rushing last year. Like, is he going to stay in the pocket more? Is the question. But you look at the yard. He only ran for 382 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen so many clips of him at Oklahoma having long runs.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
he did not do that at SC until the very end of the season.
And then he did in his hamstring. And
yes, he did in his hamstring against Utah.
There's an argument against those long runs. He did a lot of running behind the line of scrimmage too.
He did a lot of running behind the line of scrimmage. Yes, 100%. Did not have a single game over 100 yards. But yeah. All right. I think we're gonna wrap up there. This offensive preview. We've gone almost an hour and a half. It's been fun as always to talk about USC going into the season. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk about the defense, and then on Thursday, if you become a member, you get to join us and join us for Rant After Dark, Thursday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. I know it's not great for the East Coast, but it's Rant After Dark. It's a late show. We're just going to be hanging out.
Hey,
talking about random things.
Our East Coast friends need to practice staying up late.
Yeah, especially with the
games.
Big Ten coming. Those night games are back, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yep. All right. We will be back Wednesday as always. You can email us at rantoftroy@fanside.com. You can give us your calls, 818-643-7227 on the Rant Line. And we will see you when we see you on Wednesday night, 5 p.m. Pacific here on YouTube for the defensive preview. Until then, Alicia, you got a final word?
The final word is touchdown.
Really?
If you're gonna judge my final words, then you can stop asking for final words.
I mean, that's valid. That's fair, to be honest. Yeah. All right. We'll see ya. See ya.
See ya.